So I want to thank you all for coming today. I wanted, there's been so much attention on, the budget is just a gigantic document, and there are some really great environmental and energy initiatives in this budget that it's important to draw attention to. I'm joined today by local elected officials and organizations who've been real leaders at the local level to protect our water resources, our natural resources, and also help us shift to a clean energy economy. Our new Paltz Village Mayor, Tim Rogers, Mamakating Town Councilwoman, Christine Saward. We have Susan Gillespie, Citizens for Local Power, Betta, who is also Citizens for Local Power and New Yorkers for Clean Power, and Jeremy Cherson from Riverkeeper. I'm going to just speak for a few minutes about some of these initiatives, and I'd love for each of you to say a few words, if you could, about its importance for the local level, for our communities. So a big one, of course, for all of our communities is the clean water infrastructure funding. We've included $500 million in the budget to fund projects. As many of you know, our sewer infrastructure in our towns is antiquated and failing, and many of our communities are seeing infiltration by stormwater. You get huge storm events, and we end up dumping raw sewage into our rivers. So it's a priority item to invest in our water infrastructure. I know that the village of New Paltz can certainly use those resources, as well as many other communities. We've also funded the EPF, again, at a level of $300 million. That's the Environmental Protection Fund. This funding supports a wide variety of local projects, from combating algae blooms in our rivers, that's a real problem right here in the Wallkill River, to protecting farmland and supporting smart growth in our communities. So these are really important resources available to our towns and villages and small cities. I wanted to just highlight one project in particular in the EPF, which I'm very excited about, which is a carbon farming pilot project. This was a project that Assemblywoman Dee Dee Barrett had proposed, and it is now fully funded. And as chair of the Agriculture Committee, I've expanded this pilot beyond Dutchess and Columbia to also include Ulster County, Sullivan County, and Orange counties. And people don't really realize that agriculture plays a huge role potentially in addressing the climate crisis and mitigating climate change. Agriculture, our farms can store about 25%, it's estimated, of our emissions from our carbon emissions in the soils, in the roots of plants, etc. And this pilot will involve farms in all of the different counties, up to 8 farms in total, that will collaborate with the Soil and Water and state DEC to institute certain practices that will increase the storage of carbon, and that will be studied, monitored, and measured over 2 years to inform state policy to support our farmers in practices that will help us address climate change. Another big initiative in this budget it's a big achievement, is legislation that's going to significantly reduce food waste. A whopping 40% of the food that is produced in the U.S. ends up in landfills, while we have about 2.5 million New Yorkers that are struggling to get enough to eat, including many children. From an environmental perspective, it generates about 15% of our methane emissions, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. So what this legislation does is require that large food generators, so this is colleges, large supermarkets, large restaurants, correctional facilities, if they generate 2 tons of food waste or more per week, they'll be responsible for sorting that food waste, donating the edible food waste to food pantries and the like, and then the inedible food waste, if they live within 25 miles of an organic recycling facility, they have to compost. They're responsible for transporting that waste to that facility. So the DEC will be promulgating the regulations to implement this, and there will be public hearings on it. It's supposed to start in 2021, but this is a really big achievement. It's incredibly important, both from a food security standpoint and environmental standpoint, to reduce the extremely huge quantity of food waste that we generate. On the energy and clean energy and climate front, I'm extremely pleased that we took several steps that are going to help accelerate cost-effective development of renewable energy and provide local governments and community choice aggregation programs with the opportunity to procure renewable power at lower cost. The legislation enables the New York Power Authority to procure this power for them, as well as to finance the development of up to 6 large-scale renewable projects and sell that power back to local governments and community choice aggregation programs. This is considered a pilot project, which is why it's limited to 6. But if successful, I would strongly support expanding it. It's a really important step to getting lower cost renewables to our communities. NYPA is also in this legislation authorized to finance transmission to support offshore wind development. This is going to reduce both the risk and the cost of these projects because NYPA has access to lower cost capital. And finally, NYPA is authorized in this legislation to develop electric vehicle charging infrastructure throughout the state. These are critical foundational investments to enable us to transition to clean powered electric vehicles. So one last thing, of course you all know about this one. The budget bill enacts a single-use plastic bag ban statewide. Ulster County, as you know, last October passed legislation instituting a county-wide ban and charging a 5-cent fee on paper and other single-use bags. That fee is very important to incentivizing people to bring reusable bags. Studies have shown that fee is actually necessary to achieve the full environmental benefits. The statewide legislation doesn't require a statewide fee, but what it does is enable counties, cities, and local governments to implement a fee if they choose to. So I'm going to stop there. I would love to invite first our mayor, Tim Rogers, to come up and say a few words.
Thanks, Jen. So I'll take that baton and continue the discussion about the local opt-in regarding the plastic bag initiative. And I'm really excited by this initiative, and I'm super pleased that the fee was included in the proposed budget. And now we're going to look to send Eve Walter up to Ulster County to represent New Paltz and hopefully have the Ulster County folks opt in so that fee is included, and folks are encouraged to bring their own bags, which Jeremy brought here, as opposed to going ahead and being charged that fee. I think the fee is really important to encourage people not to use bags that they would get from the store. So next Wednesday here at Village Hall, we're having our public hearing regarding a community choice aggregation law that we'll have here in New Paltz. And again, this is another, I think, part of a broader initiative where if we want to go ahead and meet those goals where we do 70% renewables by 2030 and 100% full electric renewable power by 2040, we absolutely need to support municipalities so that we're choosing to purchase power from green sources. So the NYPA initiative, it has not worked where we've looked to the private sector to come up with green solutions. So we definitely need to have a combination that includes public investment to encourage renewable energy if we're going to go ahead and meet those goals of 2030 and 2040. Additionally, the discussion about water in the state budget is hugely important for our community. You know, we can show you the POs that we're signing to invest in our local infrastructure. You know, we have a 100-year-old system that desperately needs upgrades, and you know, we're spending $5.5 million on a new water filtration plant. We're actively looking at old tuberculated pipes that need to be replaced within our water main system. So $500 million is really important, and I think what this budget did is identify a bunch of environmental initiatives that are important, and you know, we're steering a big giant ship, and that's why we have someone like Jen up in Albany. It's like there's no one initiative that's going to fix all of our problems, and this is a long game, and Jen's going to again look for money like this $500 million again next year. But I think what we need is like additional commitment so that every year we're not having the state legislature renegotiate additional money. Like, this problem's not going away. It's tens of billions of dollars staring municipalities all across the state, and I think that's really the difference between, you know, just negotiating year over year commitments to dealing with infrastructure. We really need to push and take a longer term view. So it's great that we got the $500 million. It would have been better if the plan included the full $2.5 billion that the governor identified earlier this year. So hopefully the legislature can work on that a little bit more next year. And I also highlight the initiative regarding food waste, and trying to do a better job with composting is hugely important. You know, I visited the municipal recovery facility up in Albany that our community uses in partnership with county waste, and our waste problem's not going away. We got landfills closing in upstate New York, and we absolutely need to do things differently in terms of how waste is handled. And you know, again, I think this is an important step in the right direction, and we need to keep pushing. And I'm so glad that we have someone like Jen who's just going to be relentless. And you know, it's like, again, we're not going to just flip a switch and solve our problems. It's just going to be this like incremental improvement. And I think this budget with its environmental initiatives kind of gets us pointed in that direction. So let's keep building off of each of those things, like water, composting, sourcing electricity from renewables. You know, let's keep building off of those. So I'll hand it over to our next folks.
Thanks, Tim, so much. I want to bring up Christine Saward, who's on the Mamakating Town Board, and just mention the community choice aggregation programs are municipal energy programs to supply power to their residents and small businesses. So it's really great that Sullivan County, that Mamakating became the first town to adopt a local law to create such a program.
Just took everything I was going to say. Yes, Mamakating on March 19th enacted a local law, being the first one in Sullivan County to permit CCAs, which would allow possibly local lower electric rates and greener energy supplies for our consumers. We also, talking about water, we're reviewing our master comprehensive plan, and we're the first ones to do a hydrological report to see where our water is and isn't, and found that we have one of the largest aquifers running through our valley, which was really good. So we're definitely going to work on preserving that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Gillespie. I'm president of the Board of Citizens for Local Power. I'm also on the Rosendale Environmental Commission. We got to know Jen pretty well because she was our volunteer executive director for 6 years, and we are so proud of Senator Metzger. Sorry, I keep referring to her as Jen. I mean the senator. We Our mission is to help communities transition to a locally based green energy economy. And we pay a lot of attention to the ways in which communities can become active and help themselves and become more self-reliant and resilient in this situation. So we can be more reliant on our own resources, understand the energy system. Community choice aggregation is, of course, one terrific tool in that toolbox. What I want to talk about just briefly is the NYPA, involvement of NYPA, because what looked at first like a tiny sort of technical change actually has huge implications for municipalities and local governments, which is that, as we heard, a lot of the problem with green infrastructure is finding the funding for it. Not every town is willing to go out to bond for a green energy project in the town, whether it be solar or geothermal or even something like district energy, which is maybe on the horizon for cities. Letting NYPA into this business, it seems like a detail. Jen has an eye for detail. She started out in Rosendale, somehow or other, motivating the mostly men on the Environmental Commission to go out and make a record of every street light in town, whether it was working, whether it was too bright, etc. And that's where a lot of the street light conversions actually started that she's helped bring about. We are not surprised, delighted actually, although very sad that she's not with us as often, but delighted to see her in her first months as a senator making such a big impact. Thank you, Senator Metzger.
Jeremy Cherson, Riverkeeper. I just want to say Jeremy has been a leading, incredibly vocal, active advocate of the plastic bag ban, and I saw him many times in Albany. He's been working very hard, in addition to so many initiatives, to protect our waterways here in the Hudson Valley.
Thank you, Jen. My shoes have lost a lot of their soles from walking the halls in Albany. My name is Jeremy Cherson. I'm the legislative manager for Riverkeeper, and I just want to say that Jen and Riverkeeper have a pretty long history. When she was still councilwoman in Rosendale, going back to fighting the Pilgrim pipelines, and I was still a graduate intern with Riverkeeper, and she had written a report on the Pilgrim pipelines, the first report on what it would be and what it would the impacts would be on the Hudson Valley. And I just remember thinking, that is a person who is going to stop this pipeline, and I am going to get to know her and work with her. And with Kate Hudson, who's now doing fantastic stuff out in Colorado, who I talked to last night and says hello. We stopped that pipeline, and if they were still considering putting it through the Hudson Valley, they're certainly not now with Jen up in the Senate. But to comment on the budget, getting the plastic bag ban is absolutely huge. 2 years ago, the state legislature overturned New York City's 5-cent fee on paper bags and plastic bags. And now with this budget, advocates, the governor, and the legislature have righted a wrong and banned the plastic bag across the entire state. You see them everywhere. You see them along the medians of highways. You see them up in trees. They're a blight that clogs sewage infrastructure. They clog recycling materials, costing local governments and taxpayers money. Their time has come, and we are delighted that they're going to be eliminated from New York March 1st, 2020. Jen was such a strong advocate for a statewide fee on the paper bag, which we're still advocating for going forward. But in the meantime, we encourage local counties and cities to opt into the 5-cent fee. And that fee is so critical because in Suffolk County, where they had a 5-cent fee on paper bags, they reduced the usage of the paper bag by 80%. That is a huge number. And with their 5-cent fee on plastic, which they had in Suffolk County, they reduced 1 billion bags in 1 year. 1 billion plastic bags. That is huge. New York uses 23 billion plastic bags every year. So this law is going to make an enormous impact on New York's environment. And we're just getting started on the fight against single-use plastic bags, single-use plastic items. The European Union just last week moved forward in their parliament to phase out many single-use plastic products, and we hope other states in the country and New York will follow their lead. It's also, as Jen and Tim mentioned, the money for infrastructure projects, water infrastructure projects, is absolutely huge. In 2017, there was a $2.5 billion investment in water infrastructure that communities across the 42nd Senate District have utilized, and communities along the Wallkill River have utilized to upgrade sewage treatment plants, replace sewage pipes, and improve the water quality of the Wallkill River, which is one of the most taxed rivers and waterways in the Hudson River estuary. We're going to continue advocating for increased water spending at the state level. The $500 million is a great down payment on the $2.5 billion that the governor proposed that is state of the state and the Senate included in their one-house budget. And we're hoping that next year we can get the full $2 billion remaining in this multi-year program appropriated, so local governments know that when they're planning long-term engineering projects, that money will be available year after year. So if they plan a project and they don't get a grant in the year that they plan the project and apply for the grant, that they might get a shot at it the following year or the year after, and that work and that money hasn't been wasted. And finally, it is a huge achievement that the Senate and Assembly protected the Environmental Protection Fund from a proposed staff raid that would have offloaded money for capital projects from the $300 million EPF to pay for agency staff. That was a totally inappropriate proposal and use for the Environmental Protection Fund, and we are totally grateful to Senator Metzger's advocacy on behalf of protecting the EPF. So thank you very much, and Riverkeeper is very pleased with this budget.
Thank you, Jeremy. And last but not least, Betta, New Yorker's Clean Power, who's a true champion of the fight against climate change.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here with our amazing Senator Metzger and local elected officials and advocates who are really fighting for a cleaner, better New York. And this budget is truly historic. As we've heard, all of these incredible victories, and that they couldn't have been possible without the hard work of these kinds of elected officials and allies and activists working across the state. And many of these initiatives have been fought for many years. So one in particular, congestion pricing, which is not necessarily impacting us right here, but is an extremely important and historic step. In New York City, we have some of the highest rates of pollution and asthma in the entire country. And so this congestion pricing plan will reduce air pollution. In Stockholm, where they enacted a similar congestion pricing plan, they saw rates of children suffering from asthma. They saw those emergency hospital visits plummet by 50%. So we are excited to see the same kind of results here. So we have healthier, thriving communities. And we know that these kinds of steps are not only a win for the environment and our local economy, but they're also for the public health. And we need those types of clean transportation initiatives. In addition to less dirty vehicles on the road, we want to see electric vehicles on the road. So we're delighted about NYPA's new expanded power to install and operate more electric vehicle charging stations. We stand not too far away from electric vehicle charging stations right here in New Paltz. Senator Metzger's electric vehicle parked right over there. It's these kind of local efforts by individuals, by our state leaders, and by our towns that can really make a difference in this transformation, which is absolutely necessary because transportation is actually the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in New York State. So it's extremely important that we electrify that sector as quickly as possible. We love the fact that NYPA is playing an important role in this. There's a lot of talk these days about a Green New Deal, and we love that. But interestingly enough, NYPA was created by FDR in the late 1920s. So we think that it's only fitting that as we continue to build this movement for a Green New Deal in New York State, we're seeing NYPA take an even more prominent role in helping us to clean our transportation and our energy sector. We have some excellent solar panels right over here, which I love to see. And we know that with NYPA being able to play the middleman and financing more local, in-state clean energy projects for municipalities, for schools, we'll be able to really drive this market and achieve our clean energy goals. So we have to keep at it, keep working, as I know Senator Metzger will, our mayor, our local elected officials, and importantly, advocates across the state who are really making a difference in their own lives, in their communities, continuing to push so that we do achieve these important goals and turn things around to create the kind of healthy, thriving state and world that we all want to see. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Betta. And I want to thank all of you because it's really you who are doing the work at the local level that are actually making the changes happen. So thank you. And I guess if there are any questions, I could take questions on any of this. Bill.
Give me your thoughts on formation of any new landfills.
The formation of new landfills. Well, it's definitely it's going to have to happen. The more we can do to reduce waste and slow the process, the farther into the future we can push that. But it's inevitable that it's going to happen. I don't have the solution for that. It's a really difficult issue because politically, no one wants a landfill in their backyard, and we have to start making that connection between, what we throw away and, where it ends up. And really, we can do so much to reduce our waste. I mean, so much that we are not currently doing. I mean, we do have a recycling crisis. There are issues with the recycling industry generally, but there's a lot that we can do to to kind of put off the need for that decision. Eventually, though, it's going to have to happen because it's a statewide. It's not just Ulster.
How important is the food waste component of what you were talking about, the budget, to the landfill issue?
So food waste it's over 20% of what the contents of landfills. So it makes an enormous difference if we're able to reduce that significantly.
Is there anything that you can bring in the budget to what Ulster County is looking at in terms of landfills?
Bringing the budget. Well, there is funding. The EPF, the Environmental Protection Fund, also funds like solid waste projects. So potentially, there's funding there, but I don't make the decisions over which projects get chosen, but it's definitely within the categories of projects that are covered by the EPF, and that's why it's so important to fund the EPF. Any others? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here. And now it's calm down. Eve. Bye.